This isn't just some distant headline you scroll past. This is a direct confrontation, and it's playing out in real time with massive global consequences. What we're seeing between Iran and Israel, it's not just a military tit for tat. It's a high-stakes test of nerve, a war of narratives that could seriously destabilize global markets and shake confidence everywhere. So, let's break down the strategy behind all this spectacle.
I want you to just picture the scene for a moment. The usual hum of a city at night is just shattered by air raid sirens. The sky isn't lit up by buildings, but by the blinding flash of explosions and these fiery streaks of interceptor missiles. This is what it looks like when war comes to a modern city, turning streets you could walk down yesterday into an active front line. And this really forces us to ask the big question here. What actually happens when the battlefield is no longer some remote desert, but the very heart of a country's economy and culture? Well, the whole nature of war changes. The stakes are suddenly so much higher, the impact is immediate, and the human cost becomes terrifyingly real for millions of people.
So let's start right there, on the ground, in cities like Tel Aviv and Haifa. This is where all that abstract geopolitical talk, well, it crashes head-on into the reality of everyday life.
Just look at how quickly the fabric of a normal day completely unravels. The first siren goes off, and it sets off this whole chain reaction. People scramble for shelter, which of course blocks the roads. That brings business to a halt and grounds all the flights. But underneath all of that physical chaos, there's this rising tide of anxiety. You see, this disruption, it isn't just a side effect of the war. It's being used as a primary weapon to try and paralyze the nation from the inside out. And make no mistake, this is a chillingly precise strategy. Hitting Tel Aviv isn't random. It's a direct strike against the nation's financial and cultural heart. Targeting Haifa is an attack on its industrial backbone, its strategic ports. The message they're sending is unmistakable. No one is safe and nowhere is safe. This pressure is being applied everywhere, to every pillar of the country.
All right, let's move on, because those explosions lighting up the sky, that's really only half the story. This conflict is being fought just as hard in the headlines, on social media, you name it. It's become a war of messages, a real battle for perception.
And the key to understanding all of this is one word: deterrence. Now, this isn't about who has more missiles or bigger tanks. It's more like a high-stakes poker game of credibility. Who can project strength? Who can take a punch and still stand tall? Who can convince the world, their own people, and their allies that they are in control? In this kind of fight, perception is power.
And this slide, it just lays out the two competing realities perfectly. On one side, you have Iran framing these attacks as an unavoidable response, a way to show their strength after years of being under pressure. Then, on the other side, Israel presents its actions as a totally necessary defensive campaign to stop an existential threat. Both of these stories are carefully crafted to win the argument, not just at home, but on the world stage too.
But this war of words and weapons isn't happening in a bubble. It's not just contained to the Middle East. Every single escalation sends these massive shockwaves all across the globe, reaching way beyond the immediate conflict zone.
I mean, just think about it. A single missile launch can make oil prices spike, and that affects what you pay for gas. It can reroute global shipping, delaying all sorts of goods and driving up costs. Insurance rates for ships going through the region, they go through the roof. And behind the scenes, you can bet the phone lines in Washington, Moscow, and Beijing are lighting up as this regional crisis threatens to become a global one.
And who's watching all this? Well, pretty much every major world power. But they're not just watching, they are calculating. Washington is weighing its promises to its allies, Brussels is worried about stability right on its doorstep, Moscow and Beijing, they see a chance to shift the balance of power. And right next door in Riyadh, leaders are nervously trying to figure out what this means for their own security. What happens one night in Tel Aviv can literally change the math for everyone.
Which brings up a pretty sobering question for all of us, doesn't it? In a world that's so interconnected, where a conflict like this can rattle everything from the stock market to diplomatic ties, who's really safe from the fallout? The uncomfortable truth is, probably no one. This brings us to the leaders who are right at the heart of this crisis. They're not just acting as commanders, they're also crisis managers. And they're walking an incredibly fine line between showing strength and starting a catastrophic all-out war. In an environment this tense, a speech isn't just a speech, it's a strategic move. A single phrase can either calm down the markets or send them into a nosedive. One carefully chosen word can reassure an ally or sound like a threat to an enemy. Here, words are basically weapons, and every single public statement is a calculated action. And this is the razor's edge they're walking on. They have to sound tough enough for a worried public at home, but not so aggressive that they trigger something that nobody can control. They have to project this image of calm and total control, even when things are chaotic. And all the while, they have to quietly make sure those diplomatic backchannels don't completely freeze over. It is a massive, massive test of leadership.
But, for all the talk about strategy and geopolitics, we have to end this where we began, on the ground, with the people who are living under skies that could turn to fire at any second.
This quote, it just gets right to the heart of the psychological damage. The real weight for civilians isn't always just the immediate danger. It's the relentless uncertainty. It's that constant low-level hum of anxiety in the background. It's checking your phone for news, not because you're curious, but because you need to know if you're safe. That tension just seeps into everything, and it doesn't go away when the sirens stop.
And that leaves a permanent scar. Even on the quiet days, that feeling of safety, it just feels fragile, like it's borrowed time. People go back to their jobs, their cafes, their routines, but there's this unspoken understanding that this new, tense normal could be shattered in an instant. The threat isn't just out there anymore. It's a psychological state you start to carry around with you.
So we're left with the ultimate question. When a war is fought just as much with stories and narratives as it is with missiles, how do you even define victory? As both sides claim they're strong, that they're resilient, and as the rest of the world just holds its breath, the real winner in this devastating conflict of perception is, right now, completely out of sight.